Looking to start your own website? The first thing you need is a domain name, and the best place to get one is at GoDaddy.com. With your domain registration, you'll get hosting, a free blog, complete email, and much more. Plus, as a MuggleCast listener, enter code RON, that's RON when you check out, and get your .com domain name for just $7.49 a year. Get your piece of the internet at GoDaddy.com.
This is Professor McGonagall welcoming you all to MuggleCast, hoping you enjoyed. Dobby, come here. Here, Dobby. Yes, well, I'd just like to say how very pleased I am to introduce MuggleCast to all of you. Thank you.
Because the Crookshanks versus Scabbers battles have begun, this is MuggleCast, episode 192 for February the 18th, 2010.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 192. We're approaching... I was doing the math the other day, and it looks like we're going to be hitting episode 200 in late May or early June. Or maybe mid-June, I can't remember. But it's very exciting. 200 episodes.
Unbelievable.
So, as you think back on all that transcript work for 200 episodes.
That's true, very true. Do you think we'll get a trailer before that?
Oh, I hope so. Oh,
yeah.
Geez, I hope so. But, yeah, I was like, there's not going to be anything big unless they release a trailer around that time, but we'll have to make sure episode 200 is one big bonanza.
So, what you're saying, Andrew, is that we're going to London?
Yes, sure.
Because we did London, we were for their first 100.
Right, yeah, the episode 100 was in London for the release of Deathly Hallows. That worked out perfectly.
It did.
Nothing
really
can top that, I don't think.
No.
But anyway, first we need to get through 8 more episodes, including this one. There hasn't been much news, but we got plenty of emails to go through, and of course, chapter by chapter, Prisoner of Azkaban, and all that good other stuff that you've come to know and love. I'm Andrew Sims.
I'm Eric Skull.
I'm Micah Tannenbaum.
And I'm Nick Myers.
All right, Micah, what's in the news this week? It's a Lego news episode, isn't it?
It is a Lego news episode. There hasn't been much going on, as you mentioned, and I figured we'd just take a little bit of time here to talk about Lego Harry Potter, years 1 to 4. Mm-hmm. And the question I wanted to pose, because we've gotten a lot of screenshots lately, the producer of the game just recently did another interview, and actually today the cover art for the game was officially released. Do you guys think this is shaping up to be the best Potter video game?
That's a bold statement. I mean, there have been so many classics in the past.
There have not been.
It's certainly shaping up to be the funnest Harry Potter game, for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot, and I know we say this for all the EA games. They do the games for each film, but they seem to really be putting a lot of care in this, and all the videos look great. I was a big fan of the original Lego Harry Potter, and this one looks great too. So yeah, I think it could be one of the best ones.
Eric, I know you're a big Lego video game fan.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a fan of it. Everything I've been reading about the Lego Harry Potter years 1 through 4 game just seems really awesome, and of course this cover art just makes it look even cooler.
Yeah, it's really well done.
It definitely wins the cover art competition for me, compared to other Harry Potter video games. And yeah, I think it's going to be... The Lego games have a sort of humor to them that just works really well in a lot of ways, and it's going to work just as well with early Harry Potter. I think it'll be a great game. And the fact that they've had practice with, 2 renditions of the Star Wars, 2 renditions of Indiana Jones and Batman and a few others that are in the works, it's great that they waited a little while to get to Harry Potter. But the Lego Harry Potter set is a thriving area of Lego's company, and so it's great to see that they with TY Games have worked on this rendition.
Yeah, it seems like a lot more care has been put into this game. And I don't mean to knock the games that have come from Electronic Arts, because they did an amazing job with Hogwarts and the surrounding areas, but I think the biggest problem...
But it ends there.
Yeah, the biggest problem people have had with the games is the actual gameplay, and there not being enough to do, as somebody's dog points out.
Sorry.
That they agree. Your dog agrees, which is, that's a very good thing. And no, I'm hoping that although this seems in practice like a more childlike game, meaning that it's geared more for younger people, our age group may be able to enjoy it more than the EA games, because I actually thought that as much as the EA games looked like more adult games, they were actually geared more towards children.
Yeah. And, I mean, look where we are in terms of technology these days, and I think this game is going to look beautiful on high-def televisions, and especially with systems like the PS3 and the Xbox 360. I mean, I'm looking forward to just the quality, the graphic quality on these as well.
Yeah, and like you were saying about gameplay too, I mean, Order of the Phoenix, for instance, had a great roaming Hogwarts that we, read the interviews months before the game came out, and we were like, oh wow, fully immersive Hogwarts, but pretty much, I mean, and it was pretty big for an environment, but you really couldn't do anything. With it. And this Lego game is promising to, you can rebuild parts of Hogwarts and, destroy them and all that stuff. And that just sounds totally awesome. So no crevice in the game will go, untouched.
I have a PS3 that I bought primarily for the Blu-ray capabilities, and this will probably be the first video game that I buy for it, having had the PS3 for close to 2 years now. Because it's a game that actually looks worth it, and I'm just really excited for the quality, the visual quality that you're going to get. The trailer, I mean, it's just very animated. It just looks great. It looks great. Yeah,
the detail, as I said, it's just amazing, and I like how the producer pointed out that if you're in year 1, you're not able to access everything around the castle. Certain parts of it are locked off, or even other areas that they've developed, not just Hogwarts specifically, but and also that you need to actually travel from one place to another. It's not going to be like EA where you get these cutscenes and all of a sudden you end up somewhere else. You have to work your way through the years.
Not only that, but the fact the characters can grow throughout the game, and you're not given all the spells at the start to practice with and then use throughout like you are with EA games. With this one, you're learning and growing throughout the years. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that is definitely cool. We got some feedback from you guys via Twitter. We asked you on our Twitter account at twitter.com/MuggleCast. We asked, do you think that this game is turning out to be the best Harry Potter video game? APGB said, I love the fact you'll be able to play as over 100 unlockable characters, even Fang. That's really cool.
That's amazing.
That's been a staple of the Lego games, though. Play as literally that many characters. Especially Star Wars. Every character, even non-play characters, they call them, guards and all sorts of, soldiers that are in the background of certain cutscenes and levels are all programmed so you can end up playing as them, especially in free play mode, but, playing as Fang and everything. And each of the characters have their own, skill set, especially, in Indiana Jones in particular. And there was an article where they said, they're going to reference something similar to that, where each of these 100 characters are going to have, a different, set of, skills and abilities, even if it's just jumping higher, that's going to help you choose, which character you're going to be roaming Hogwarts.
Right. And there was a video demonstration the other day of how they're designing Quidditch, and it's that same exact thing where Harry is the best person to use for flying around on brooms. And they demonstrated how Ron and Hermione have they struggle with controlling their brooms and climbing aboard it. So that's the kind of detail that I think we're all looking forward to.
Oh, yeah.
Fliz Loves Khan writes, the game looks excellent. I love the way I can revisit the books in gaming format with the added bonus of the Lego theme. Prude Hivil writes, the previews look good, but do you think that they will have 2 games for the 7th book because the movie is in 2 parts?
I don't think so, personally. I think they'll do a 5 to 7 one.
Yeah.
As well. I mean, for me personally, one of my problems with the EA games is that the storytelling is actually quite short, and the game doesn't last very long. It's only the mini quests and adventures that pad it out. And I think one of the things that's going to be good about this Lego game is that it encompasses 4 whole years, and that they can add a lot more to the length of the game.
Well, also a possible Lego Harry Potter years 5 through 7 would directly ride on how well years 1 through 4 do.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of sales and in terms of reviews. If it gets great reviews and great sales, they'll definitely go for 5 through 7. So let's hope it does well.
It was really clever and, I almost want to say insightful that they stopped, with years 1 through 4, that they focused on essentially half the series.
Right.
Because, after... these games, what I want to say is these games have this level selection and main menu kind of world in and of itself. Be it this, like in Star Wars, it was the Cantina, and in Indiana Jones, it was Cambridge, where you can walk around, and that has its own gameplay elements as well. And thinking about years 1 through 4, I can't wait. And what you said about certain parts of Hogwarts being locked off, as a level select area, there's no better place than Hogwarts. But years 5 through 7, especially 7, takes place really far away from Hogwarts. So they're going to have to reevaluate how they do that for that section of the gaming, because a lot of the books start taking place elsewhere, in important areas that we're going to want to play in, but they can they can cross that bridge when they come to it, essentially, because they just have years 1 through 4, and they're all set at Hogwarts, and they're all going to be lots of fun.
Maritza Cardona writes, the visuals seem great, and the comedic moments actually made me smile. This one looks better than the first HP games released. Prior, I guess she means.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we all touched on that.
Yeah.
That we agree this is better than EA.
Finally, Andrew NH writes, I think they are awesome, so much more like the books, and I hope it's an open world like the other Lego Harry Potter, or like the other Lego games, and it'll be so fun. So there you go. Some feedback from those of you who follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/MuggleCast. Thanks for the feedback. Another news, Micah?
Well, I just wanted to mention, since we're on the topic of video games, didn't EA... No?
I said onward. Onward. Oh. Yeah.
No, this is important, though, for the people who love the boring EA games, that Electronic Arts announced that there's going to be a Harry Potter title that's going to be released this fall. And I'm just kind of wondering, though, are they going to break the game up in 2? Because that would just be bad.
So.
They don't have a choice, I guess, because they use so many cutscenes from the movies. And they're very movie-based as opposed to book-based, but I can't see the sales for that video game doing very well.
Well, I think that's the thing. Like, if they don't release a video game, a Harry Potter title this year, they would have to wait for Part 2. They can't release an entire video game for Parts 1 and Part 2 this fall, because it would spoil the second half of the movie. So... I think they see it as a money-making opportunity. Even though I officially have lost faith in EA's Harry Potter video games. I mean, I know they care so much, and they're such a good team of people. We've met them and interviewed them. They're so nice, but I guess the Harry Potter games just aren't meant to be built how they're building them, because they really don't work.
No, they don't. I think they should have developed them more as a role-playing game, kind of similar to A Legend of Zelda, where you have that free roaming ability. I mean, you do, but it's still restricted. Like, if you play these past video games, Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, you can move around Hogwarts, and you can kind of go to the outlying grounds, but, you can't get into Hogsmeade, you can't go to other places and travel around, Diagon Alley or, I don't know, pick a place. But the point is that they really screwed up, I think. Not in their design, because, again, I think what they did with Hogwarts was unbelievable and how they created it in the video game sense, but I think just the gameplay aspect of it failed so miserably.
Yeah. On the other hand, maybe EA could surprise us and release a entirely new game, like a new Quidditch game. That would be good. Quidditch World Cup. That was a good game.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And it was totally, and that seemed to have the least, direct influence from a movie or anything. I mean, they basically took Joe's world
Right.
and they fleshed it out. Playing that game in Tokyo, for instance, is just, it's a beautiful stadium and you get to play it at like sunset. Just amazing visuals, great gameplay. All around, it wasn't an easy fix. You had to go around and play as all the different, teams and, win the World Cup with them. So it was long playing, it was just a really smart idea.
It was fun. So maybe they'll do a new unique idea like that, but who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Even though my money's still on Deathly Hallows Part 1, the video game being released. Run through the forest, press A, zoom around that tree.
So wrapping up the LEGO news, there was a press release last week that 6 new LEGO Harry Potter construction sets and a LEGO Harry Potter board game are going to be released later on this year in the fall.
Yeah.
Excited?
I've always been a fan of the Lego construction. Hey, don't laugh. This is serious. I've always been a fan of the Lego construction sets, and they tend to be kind of expensive, so I may not buy one, but they're fun.
Did you see the video though?
Huh? Oh, of the board game?
It doesn't even look anything like anything related to the series.
Board game they're building does not look good, but the construction sets look cool. And I got to say, those old Harry, they had made a castle, close to 10 years ago now, as a construction set, and that thing is worth a lot of money now.
Is it?
Those things, if you have an original, yeah. My dad bought one and sold it on eBay for like $300.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I was like, Dad, why didn't you give it to me? He's like, quiet, son, back to the cupboard. But I'm looking. Is anyone else excited for these construction sets?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
That was a no.
Well, I mean, like, and it looks like the burrow and stuff. They're getting, they're creative again. Like, it's not just the graveyard set where it's like, maybe a few characters or so, but it's mostly nothing. And it's probably difficult to come up with these construction sets, because there are so many places in Harry's world, but they're so huge, like the Ministry of Magic. You just don't want to not do them justice. But yeah, I think they got their little creative edge back.
Right. Anything else in the news, Micah?
No, that is it. LEGO news.
Well, we should also say happy birthday to Emerson Spartz, the webmaster and founder of MuggleNet. He turns 23. He turned 23 on February 17th, so happy birthday to him.
Happy birthday, Emerson.
Sorry, I don't have a song prepared. I
was waiting for something to play there.
No, but
we could all sing if we want, but I would advise against that.
Happy birthday to you.
To you.
Okay, well, before we get to Muggle Mail this week, we have a couple of emails about that that negative J.K. Rowling email that we read on the show last week. We got a lot of feedback, but we just have 2 emails here. Nick, do you want to read the first one from Brittany?
Sure. This is from Brittany, who's 14 and from Ohio, and she writes, after listening to Anna's letter last episode, which was highly critical, I feel I must disagree with her strongly on one point in particular. She says Harry Potter is nothing more than a staggeringly popular book for children. Well, then, how did it get so popular? When she was reading the series, did she understand the emotional depths, powerful themes, and meaningful morals in it? Or did she just read it looking for nothing but pleasure reading and taking in no knowledge whatsoever? This book is not popular because it is merely an enjoyable children's book. Incidentally, it is not just for children either. It is popular because of the themes of love, grief, and trust. Can you get that in a video game? I encourage readers of Harry Potter to look deeper, as the MuggleCasters have always done so well, and not judge based on popularity.
I actually do think that's one of the things that's harmed Harry Potter. Outsiders look at Harry Potter and say, oh, it's just popular because it's popular. And, it's just in right now. It's sort of the thing. But as Brittany brings up, how did it get so popular? And it was because of how well written these books are. It wasn't. I really don't think it was just some sort of like trend. People genuinely enjoy the books.
Yeah. The world in the books is unmatched. Really, it is. And as we go through, I know my chapter by chapter this week, we'll just see how crafty, Joe was in these, early Harry Potter novels and establishing just how deep her world is. And the characters are just really relatable and completely...
It's unfair to cheapen the series as a fad, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do that with Twilight if you want. I might agree with you. But
I don't think that we spent 192 episodes on nothing either. That's the other side of it. I mean, there have been shows that we've really gotten deep into things, and one of them would be the politics show that we spent just, I think, close to 2 hours discussing, the symbolism.
Politics.
yeah. I mean, I didn't know what other word to use, but I mean, we really did, spend a lot of time discussing that, and we've broken down characters. We've had analysis of a lot of them, devoted shows just to certain characters. So I don't think that it's a child's book. I don't think you could do that with the Mother Goose stories where you can break down characters to the depth that we've done, or look at the symbolism in those stories as much as you can with a series like this.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's no way we could do a podcast, like Micah said at the beginning of that, for 192 episodes. Like, there's no other book series that I know of. Maybe Lord of the Rings, although I've never read it. Well, let's move on now to Muggle Mail. The first email comes from Aaron, 19, of Sydney, Australia. He says, I'm up to the bit where you guys are talking about the Weasleys' winnings and their trip in episode 191. I think it was not a case of money mismanagement, and I don't think they should be penalized for spending it the way they did. The Weasleys have lived like this forever, and they're comfortable with it. They don't want any Malfoy mansion. The Burrow is their mansion. They are proud of who they are. Anyway, who says investing money to get more money is wise? I think spending the money on a family trip would have brought them much more joy than any amount of money, not to mention all the memories they now have.
It's
a good point.
Are these the same people that wrote in about how the Weasleys were mismanaging their money? Now all of a sudden we criticize them, and these same people are writing back to criticize us. I mean, I know the biggest thing we left out when we discussed it on our last show was that they were going to visit Bill, and that was their primary reason for the trip.
Yeah.
And
you're all kind of harsh last episode.
Well, what's your opinion of it,
They
Nick?
should just invest in banks, and I think that was the conclusion. It's the last time they all got to spend time together as a family before later on in the series when half of them die or whatever. So I think it was a good thing to do. They came across a windfall of unexpected cash. They had lived acceptably before they had it. I can't blame them.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was wrong when I said that. We always hear them complaining about money, because they really don't in the books. But they do sort of allude. We do see hints of, J.K. Rowling drops ideas to us of how poor they are, and maybe Aaron's right. Maybe they enjoy living that way, and that's fine. And I'm glad they went on a vacation and had a great time.
It couldn't have cost that much money, though, if you think about it. I mean, they don't travel by
7
air.
kids? Oh, yeah, you're right.
And they probably have a place to stay with Bill.
Or a tent.
So they probably didn't spend a whole lot of it on the trip. But I would say we got 50 emails alone just on this, and how
people are very
horrible
passionate
of people we are to have criticized Weasleys.
You picked a strong email. I mean, I think that this email is very strong and not, offensive in any way, but it gets to the point. So that's really good.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, it's not cleared up in the books, but can't they just flea powder themselves to Egypt and then just...
You would think so.
I can't imagine the cost being that much. Anyway.
True. Yeah. Or use a port key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, can you read the next email for us, please?
Sure. Next email is from Aaron, who's 17 and from New Zealand. In episode 191, you were discussing why Harry didn't stay away from Marge, why Vernon doesn't stop him being near Marge. Well, the answer is actually in the book. I didn't see how any of you didn't pick up on this when you just read those chapters. And he quotes the books, and it says, Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia usually encouraged Harry to stay out of their way, which Harry was only happy to do. Aunt Marge, on the other hand, wanted Harry under her eye at all times, so that she could beam out suggestions for his improvement.
I'd like to say that I did know about this, and I tried to bring it up, but I think we sort of got sidetracked. My point was that Uncle Vernon should have stepped in and overpowered Aunt Marge, since he knew what Harry could do if he was pushed. So therefore, it was his responsibility to take action. We knew that Aunt Marge wanted Harry there, but Uncle Vernon should have said, no, he has to stay up in his room. Sorry. And just leave it at that.
I think Uncle Vernon's under the hierarchy of people there, isn't he? He was kind of...
It is what in the hierarchy?
Lower down. I think Aunt Marge, what she says goes.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's pretty sad if it's true.
Vernon is kind of submissive there.
Eric, you want to take the next email?
Sure. Next one is from Nicole17 from Canada. She says, Hey, MuggleCasters. First off, I just wanted to say that I love the show. You guys make my day whenever there's a new show. Anyway, I'm writing in response to something you said in your last episode, 191, about witches and wizards choosing not to go to school or learning to harness their magic. I just wanted to point out that we see an example of this in Book 7 when Dumbledore's sister refuses to learn magic and keeps it all bottled inside of her. There are some pretty nasty side effects to this refusal to learn magic. She ends up killing someone. Therefore, I don't think that a magical person would be allowed, by law, to decide not to learn how to use their magic properly. Once again, I love the show. Everyone is my favorite, but I think that Lady Dumbledore and Fawkes top my list for sure. Thanks so much for this show. You guys are the best. Do we have some new hosts that you guys aren't telling me about? This Lady Dumbledore and Fawkes?
Well, they came alive during one episode.
Oh,
Ben and I created them. They lived through us. But this is a really good point. And I think this is a great example, as Nicole says, of why everybody needs to be educated.
But Dumbledore's sister was traumatized, wasn't she? I mean, it wasn't like she didn't want to learn magic in an institution because she didn't like institutions.
Yeah,
right?
The insinuation was always that she was raped, right?
Yeah,
I think.
Or something serious
was done to her. Yeah, and I think there's a difference between not learning how to harness your magic or use your magic and being educated. You know, I think you could learn how to use it at home. You don't have to go to an institution in order to learn how to use it properly. I'm sure there are people that can teach you outside of school.
But this issue with Dumbledore's sister, not learning how to do magic, and it is in the book that, it manifested itself in weird ways and she couldn't control it and that sort of thing. I think that had to do more with her emotional state, and her ability to come to terms with what happened. And obviously, I mean, her dad tried to avenge her and ended up in Azkaban. So it was kind of an upset family unit, the Dumbledores. And I think of the Dumbledores as being the extreme case in many instances. Like, you got Albus Dumbledore, who's highly intelligent, very successful, discovers 12 different ways to use dragon's blood. And, he's obviously this great scholar. And then his sister is, damaged to the point where she's like a harm to herself with the magic that she possesses. Like, she's unable to channel it and learn it and study it. And it just seems like the Dumbledores are a family of extremes.
Next email, Micah!
Well, if 50 emails came in about the Weasleys, I think another 50 came in about this topic. Lauren, 18 from Chicago, writes, when you got into the argument about Colin Creevy's camera and why it works in Hogwarts, it's because it isn't really technology. There's nothing digital about it because it's an old-timey camera. I'm pretty sure Colin even makes comments about how he needs to get the film developed special to get the pictures to move magically, which implies that he's kicking it old school photography-wise.
Now, guys, why was this question asked? Because Joe answers this on her website, right?
No, yes, but again, this is something I was trying to get my point across with, but everyone was making fun of me on the show. Yes, some cameras, old school cameras, were not technically technical.
Electronic,
that makes sense. Electronic, yes, thank you. So
more mechanical than electronic. So what was your point last episode?
My point was that, well, Ben brought up the question, someone brought up the question, how can Colin Creevey have a camera in Hogwarts? But that person, whether it was Ben, I think it was Ben, was thinking that it was some, digital camera that he can use to upload pictures to Facebook on. But no, it's some old school camera, from early 1900s, I would guess.
So it's more mechanical than electronic.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
it's like a Polaroid.
It wasn't from Ben. It was from Tiffany15 of Pittsburgh.
Oh,
it was a feedback
notes.
email. Well, I actually just looked at our document from last episode. So
it was a tweet. I see. You're all out for me.
I'm just looking at Joe's website now. She explains it fully and how it doesn't use batteries. It runs off magic, and the camera's developed with different potions. It's all there.
Yeah.
Why would we go there? That site's never updated anymore.
Well, here's the thing, and
true.
I feel bad when people email us and they're like, "Well, duh, it was on her site." There's just so much to keep track of at this point. It's kind of impossible unless we were Googling every single little thing that we bring up in the show, which can get very hard.
Yeah, but
more often than not, unless one of us remembers. As in Nick's case, he remembered,
Thanks for that, Nick. Yeah, the best thing we can do is not spend a whole lot of time on it in the follow-up show.
Yeah. So, with that said, next email comes from Kayla13 of Wenatchee, Washington. Something like that. Hello, MuggleCasters. I've been a short-time listener and have a small point to make. Last episode, you were discussing the fact that Hogwarts seemed to be a lower-class school compared to Durmstrang and Beauxbatons. My problem is, in the books, Hogwarts did not seem like the lower class to me, but the middle class. During the Yule Ball, Krum was telling Hermione about Durmstrang, describing it as not as big nor as comfortable as Hogwarts. Students from Durmstrang also seemed very impressed by the Hogwarts castle upon arrival. On the other hand, the students of Beauxbatons had looks of disgust upon their faces and boasted about their beautiful castle. It just seemed to me that Durmstrang was lower class, Beauxbatons was upper class, and Hogwarts was in the healthy middle class. Sorry if that was lengthy, but it's been bugging me all day. Love the show. Keep up all the great work. Love and hugs, Kayla. I think that was a point that we missed last episode, and I think it's a very good one.
Yeah, I think it has less to do with the schools themselves being low, high class at all. I think it has more to do with the geographical region that they're in.
Yeah.
The Bulgarian.
I was going to say that.
Durmstrang, that it's this drafty. I think they go into more detail later that it's this horrible cold place, as opposed to Hogwarts, which is too drafty for the Beauxbatons group, but at the same time, Hogwarts is kind of, I guess, a middle ground in that. But I think the French, I think Jo is characterizing having lived in France. I think that's her insight into the kind of personality that French school children in the wizard world, at least, would have about their school, that their school's the best. I think it's more of a characterization of Jo, and I think it has less to do with actually politically, economically, what class goes there. We know that all students in those geographic regions go to those wizard schools. Those are the schools to go to. So, you get higher class, like Malfoy, who lives in a mansion, and then you got Harry, who lived in a cupboard, and they both go to Hogwarts.
The next email is from Elise. She's 18 and from Pennsylvania. She writes, "Hey guys, love the show. I've been listening since episode 42. Anyways, I wanted to write in because I was listening to episode 189 and a listener wrote in wondering how Snape would feel about Harry naming his kid after him. While I originally agreed with you that he would probably be kind of mad, I soon remembered that Jo made sure to mention in the epilogue that Albus Severus was the only one of Harry's 3 kids to inherit Lily's eyes. I think Snape would be very happy to know that his name was so closely connected to such an important and vivid piece of Lily. Thanks for reading, Elise." Liz.
Why were you guys saying that he would be mad?
It was another email. We didn't say that he would be mad. Somebody asked if they thought he would be mad if he would roll over in his grave, or wasn't that the question?
Yeah, that was something like that.
It's funny.
All right. You want me to take the last one?
Please.
The last email comes from Jasmine20 of Chicago, and she says, "Hey MuggleCasters, I've just discovered the show within the past week, and I love it. I can't believe I've gone all this time without hearing about it, and I've become an instant fan."
Can I stop you right there for a second?
Yeah.
It's really cool to see how people are still discovering our show. That really means a lot to us, and that's really great. I mean, in the back of my head, I wonder, where have you been for so long? But on the other hand, it's great to see that you're now discovering the show. So thank you, and hello to all new listeners in the past year or two. So anyway.
She goes on to say, "I know you've just finished your chapter-by-chapter roundup for Chamber of Secrets, but when I was catching up with the old episodes, I was struck by your observations about the symmetry of the series, especially between number 2 and number 6. I don't know if you've discussed this before, but I found it interesting that Ginny's attachment to Riddle's diary mirrors Harry's attachment to the Half-Blood Prince's potion book. Ginny and Harry both fall victim to trusting books with mysterious authors, the use of which almost kills people, the petrified victims, and Sectum Sempered Draco. I found it odd that Harry would trust the book in the first place after Ginny's previous experience, but then again, Harry is often unaware of his own obsessions. Thoughts? Thanks for Thanks for reading my long-winded question, Jasmine."
That is a great connection.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was a really good connection.
It's very interesting.
I love that. I love symmetry and parallels and perpendiculars. Everything is so cool.
That was a Laura deal, right? She was the one who went down, or she was the one that went through and broke down all those.
Yeah, we gotta find that discussion and maybe make a page out of it on MuggleNet. That'd be cool.
Add it to the Wall of Fame.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That should be a Wall of Fame episode.
Yeah, I don't think it's in there.
Yeah, I don't think so either. We're always talking about it. Maybe it didn't exist. We've just been talking about it for so long, we just started to think it was true.
Yeah, that was a good episode that should have existed.
Yeah. Oh, Jasmine also says that I have a sexy voice.
So do you want to record a message to Jasmine? Tell her.
I just read her email. That should suffice, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
So that does it for Muggle Mail, and now it's time for Chapter by Chapter. It's so good to be going through these books chapter by chapter because it's great analysis we're uncovering, great refresher, just a lot of fun.
We don't yet have intro music, do we, Andrew? For this?
No. Chapter by chapter, we're going chapter by chapter.
Okay. Nice. That was a good job.
That worked.
Spot on.
Or this. Chapter by chapter, we slowly discover things we did not once know.
That's a little bit over the top.
Okay. All right. I'll try to develop something. Or someone else
Or maybe
can.
ask the fans. Come in with your most operatic chapter by chapter intro and send that.
Come up with here's a fun idea.
Issue a challenge, Andrew.
Yes. Andrew's Listener Challenge. Listen up. Oh, we need a intro for that too. Anyway, come up with your own musical intro for chapter by chapter, and each week we'll play a different one to intro
it. That works.
Assuming we get enough entries.
Yeah.
Send them in, and we'll play them before the. Make up a little jingle, chapter by chapter. Maybe I'll make one next week to encourage people to do it. There's your listener challenge. All right. So anyway, these three chapters focus on Harry as he makes his journey to Hogwarts and begins his third year at Hogwarts. And Micah is going to take chapter 4, The Leaky Cauldron.
The chapter opens talking about the freedom Harry now enjoys. And it's interesting to get this kind of a look at Harry's character because normally when all the books open up, he's stuck at the Dursleys and, he's very confined and constricted about what he can do. And yes, he was at the Dursleys in the beginning of this book as well, but now he's sort of off on his own and he has the opportunity to wake up when he feels like it. He can eat whenever he wants and he can kind of go wherever he pleases as long as he stays within Diagon Alley. And he seems almost like he's on a bit of a vacation, as he's hanging out around all these stores and checking out what's in all these different shops. And they make a note that Harry's eating ice cream almost, every half hour, I think it is. So do you guys think there's a little bit of a different look into Harry who what might have he been like if he didn't get stuck with the Dursleys all the time.
It's very awesome, yeah, to see him like this, like you say, Micah, because usually he's strained or or stressed, and I don't think, I mean, it's definitely a rare moment in this series that we see him getting to enjoy this. Where it's pretty much Harry going around loving magic, but still, he gets to relax in his world, and that's just something that obviously, as a tragic hero, he gets very little time to do. So it's good that you pointed this out, and yeah, it's great to see Harry, and even Florian Fortescue, who was never resolved in Book 7. Florian Fortescue, helps Harry with his homework, and that's really cool. Just a great moment of relaxation for him. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mentioned he's kind of bumming around Diagon Alley, and probably the most important thing that we see him come across that plays a role later on in the book is the firebolt. And I thought that was a little bit of foreshadowing. Obviously, we know now Sirius sends it to him with no ill intent, but there's a huge part of the book later on where Harry gets angry with Hermione for telling McGonagall that they don't know where this broomstick came from. But completely different than how this plays out in the movie, because he doesn't get the firebolt till the end of the movie.
That's right.
But just really weird that here he is looking at this broomstick that ends up playing a role later on.
And he wants it badly too. He's standing there like, wow, I really want this. And I think he wonders aloud if he is going to deplete his money because he can afford it. And yeah, I had forgotten all about that firebolt being confiscated. Like, that's a big part of Harry's character as well that we'll visit later in this book.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I gotta say, the firebolt was one of those one of the first magical objects that I personally was truly very fascinated by. And I even had in 5th grade, I think, or 6th grade, there was a project where we had to make a product. A imaginary product, like bring it to real life. So I made the firebolt, and like I took some gold spray paint and spray painted the broom part of it, and I painted the stick red, and I put firebolt on it, and we may still have it. I had a box. It was gold. It was awesome. And it was just a really cool object, and you sort of watched Harry be so fascinated by it, and it made me become fascinated by it.
I think if Ben or Jamie were on the show right now, they would definitely make fun of you, but I can't do a good enough British accent to mock you properly. But anyway, we learn in this chapter, or we've probably heard mentions of it in the chapters preceding, but Harry's taking 2 new courses this year, Divination and Care of Magical Creatures. And, he goes and he realizes that the Monster Book of Monsters book that Hagrid has given him will come in handy when he goes into Flourish and Blots, and it doesn't have to go through the process and make the storekeeper dig into this crate of books that are absolutely tearing each other apart.
Yeah,
and he goes to the back of the store with the storekeeper to get Unfogging the Future for Divination. And all of a sudden, he's distracted by this book called Death Omens, What to Do When You Know the Worst is Coming. And there's this big black dog on the cover of the book. And we've obviously seen a big black dog earlier on in Prisoner of Azkaban, just before the night bus shows up to get Harry, and now we see it again. So I don't know if we want to keep count somewhere of how many death omens we see throughout the course of this book.
It's probably worth it. But as I say later too, I mean, I love what it turns out to eventually be is, confusion with all these death omens, and Harry gets really concerned, and people are literally, coming up to him and telling him that he's going to die, and he has all this anxiety for it, and how it plays out, it's very interesting to see Harry, being only 13 years old, wonder, am I going to die? And obviously he's been slated to, by some of the characters we meet later. But this whole death omens thing is really interesting that it's in this book, and very fascinating to read Harry's reaction to seeing the death omens.
And this is a classic example of poor, inexperienced Harry, how he's so scared by the death omens. And I really like seeing Harry in this sort of, stage. It's cute.
Huh. Yeah, where he's like vulnerable.
Scary might be a better word. But the next point I put in here, because we got the emails from last show about how J.K. Rowling doesn't do a whole lot of character development, and Harry, as he's in Diagon Alley, he spends more time there. A lot of these students begin to show up, and one of the people that he runs across is Neville, and he sees Neville with his grandmother, and the book notes that Harry hopes Neville's grandmother never finds out that he pretended to be Neville while on the run from the Ministry of Magic. And to me, that was just, I don't know, I just kind of thought that as a funny moment. Here's Harry watching Neville's grandmother, never really properly introduced to her until Order of the Phoenix, and yet he already has this suspicion that she's just somebody you don't want to mess with.
Yeah. Definitely not something that would be in the book if J.K. Rowling lacked in character definition.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Take that.
Now, Harry ends up meeting with Ron and Hermione, and we get our first glimpse into something being up with Hermione when we see that she has 3 bags full of books, and she says herself she's studying arithmancy, care of magical creatures, divination, study of ancient runes, Muggle Studies, and this is all on top of their regular coursework, like herbology and potions and things like that. So I wanted to know, does Ron raise a good point when he asks her why she is taking Muggle Studies? This seems like something that would be an easy grade for her, and I know she says that she wants to look at it from a wizarding perspective, but that seems like some BS to me. I mean, that's such an easy class for her to take. That's like when you take like Geography 101 in college.
Look, I remember to this point. Did Andrew? Did you want to say something?
That was Nick.
Oh, Nick, did you want to say something?
I'll say it after that.
All right. Well, I just remember in high school, I got upset when a lot of kids took Spanish who already knew how to speak Spanish, and I held it against them. But looking at this, this way, and I think later in the year too, Hermione gets like 150% or something on the exam for Muggle Studies, is what it says, is what the book says. So yes, in one way, it is a very easy grade. I at least, I think it's good that Hermione's also taking 10 extra other classes, is all I'm saying. It's not like she's taking Muggle Studies instead of divination or instead of the other classes.
True.
That way would be an easy grade. She's actually she's got a time turner, and she says, well, I'm going to use it to its full potential. I'm going to take all these classes.
And it's just in her character. She just wants to be busy like this, and she wants to know every single thing. And I guess to answer this question best, we should look at what Muggle Studies actually teaches. And I'm going to look it up right now because, maybe there are things that Hermione needs to learn. Who knows?
Actually, if you think about it, she only had 11 years or 5 or 6 years of traditional Muggle education.
Right. And she's probably also very interested in seeing the wizard's perspective of Muggles in general.
Which is what she said, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's the whole, think of the stereotypes and the mad things that wizards perceive us to be, and I think that's one of the reasons why I would certainly do it if I was her.
According to...
I mean, it's the whole Arthur Weasley, what is the point of a rubber duck scenario, isn't it?
Exactly.
Just a lesson of that would just be funny for me, I guess.
Yeah. According to the Harry Potter lexicon, Muggle Studies is a course in the history, culture, and psychology of non-magical people. The class attempts to help young witches and wizards understand the difference between the way Muggles think and the way wizards think. So, yeah, I think this is primarily Hermione's way of learning how wizards look at Muggles.
Easy A.
Or
whatever the equivalent is.
Yeah, for how ignorant it seems that Muggles or wizards are throughout the entire books, it seems like Muggle Studies, the class, isn't much better.
And
but
what was her official job? Did she move into something that Muggle Studies might have helped in when she grew up?
Right. That's a good question. Isn't she like not the Muggle liaison? I'm gonna look that up while you guys talk.
But anyway, this is our first look at her taking on a course load that just doesn't meet with the time requirements. So even early on, we get a feeling that Hermione's up to something. And then we learned from Ron that Egypt didn't agree with Scabbers.
Right.
And once we are in the pet store, I'll call it, when Hermione goes to look for an owl, Ron takes Scabbers, puts him on the countertop, and has him inspected. And it's interesting to me that Ron doesn't seem to know how old this rat is or what powers he has. Now, that should probably have been, the first time we were reading through, knowing J.K. Rowling, a red flag right away.
Especially when we're told a normal rat lives 3 years or something like that in the...
So something's up with that. And we get the first mention of him missing a toe.
Oh, yeah.
Which comes to play later on.
Yeah, very significant. But Jo has masked it and is able, I mean, we're able to see, because she says because this old storekeeper lady says that rats are only supposed to live 3 years, and Ron's like, well, crap, I've had this, this rat's been in the family forever. It furthers the anxiety that Scabbers is going to die. So later same day when Hermione gets Crookshanks, and throughout the entire book, we're basically told that Scabbers, shouldn't be alive. And,
right.
It helps us side with Ron, or at least see where he's coming from when this woman in authority has told Ron to pretty much say goodbye and offers him new rats to buy, instead. It's interesting. But it is a plot point. It's masked by this emotion. And that just goes to, show how clever J.K. Rowling is.
So we get introduced to Crookshanks, as you mentioned, Eric, and he ends up being the reason why Scabbers runs out of the store. And while Harry and Ron go to find Scabbers, Hermione ends up buying Crookshanks. And I wrote there round one, because we know there's a number of incidents throughout the course of this book where the two of them get into it with each other.
Yeah, and in Chapter 5, the discussion I wrote for it, we'll get into that. I want to delve into that a little deeper. I have a little thing to discuss there.
Cool.
Yeah. So later on in the chapter, Arthur Weasley makes the comment, Black's not going to be caught by a 13-year-old wizard. And this is just, again, J.K. Rowling at her best, I guess. Maybe not if you're Anna. But there it is, sort of the irony of his statements. Because indeed, in a way, he is caught by a 13-year-old wizard.
Well, it's interesting because Arthur is and the whole world at this point is blind to Sirius Black's true intentions. So whereas Arthur Weasley says Black's not going to be caught by a 13-year-old wizard, implying that he's so powerful, so dangerous, so dark, Black really, Sirius wants to have a relationship with this 13-year-old wizard that Arthur Weasley's, speaking of, in his deepest heart. So it's almost like it's non sequitur in a way because, he doesn't have the facts, but in reality, it's that Sirius is, obviously not a villain. But what I want to say is that Black had no choice but to interact with this 13-year-old wizard in a way that, their fates are linked, I guess is all I'm trying to say. Yeah. As is the case so often in these Harry Potter books, the fates are linked. But it's really cool, to see and to point out that Arthur Weasley's like, oh, well, not going to happen. And then it does. Uh-huh. It's not a show of bad writing or anything like that. It's actually the opposite.
Well, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And, in this chapter also, we see a lot of Fred and George, making fun of Percy. And this is a larger question throughout the series, I guess, but do you think Percy would have turned out to be as big of a git, as they refer to him, throughout the books if Fred and George treated him a little bit better? I mean, they do get on Ron, but not as much as they do with Percy, and, they make fun of who he is as a person, his personality. And in this chapter, they take his head boy badge, which he's really proud of, and they make it read Big Head Boy. So
I don't know if the amount of badgering they were doing against Percy was really enough to really change Percy's character. So right. I think there is some deeper stuff going on with Percy there. I certainly think if Fred and George were treating him nicer, I don't think there would have been any difference, really. I mean, he still would have had his issues with the family. So.
Right. Okay. Well, moving on, Harry overhears Mr. and Mrs. Weasley talking about Sirius Black. They're all back at the Leaky Cauldron now, and Harry has come downstairs, I think, to get Ron's rat tonic.
Tonic.
For Scabbers.
It's like a manicure for rats.
And we get our first reference of he's at Hogwarts, which they did play up in the movies. And we learn from Mr. Weasley that Fudge never reported this line to the Daily Prophet. Now, do you think this was a misstep on his part, or you just think that the information wasn't there yet to make it seem as if maybe it's not Harry, maybe it's somebody else?
Or maybe they just didn't want to report it in case...
Panic.
They thought they could catch Black. So if they put in the papers they know where he is, maybe they think Sirius is going to run away, or...
It's possible.
I don't know. Maybe it was more beneficial to withhold it from the press.
I mean,
in hopes of capturing
if you think about parents reading this article about an alleged serial killer who was plotting to get someone who's at Hogwarts, they wouldn't let their kids go to Hogwarts.
We'd have book 5, 2 books early, or book 6.
Yeah.
So, and this is just one of the first poor steps by the Ministry with how they keep not reporting things to the Daily Prophet or making sure they don't show up in the Daily Prophet.
But it's kind of like they have no choice but to catch Black. That's their only lead in a way. So they're able to put Dementors at the entrance of Hogwarts and just say out of coincidence or out of happenstance, oh, this is just for protection generally, nothing to fear, etc. They're able to do that under the guise of just generally protecting their student community, when actually that's their best chance to trap Sirius Black when he does show up.
You're absolutely right.
Kind of going off of that point, why does Dumbledore agree to let the Dementors guard Hogwarts? I mean, is it really necessary, and why not put Aurors around the grounds?
Well, I think the parents appreciate seeing some protection around Hogwarts, whether they know or not that Sirius may be planning to go to Hogwarts. But I also think Dumbledore, as much as he does not like the Dementors, I mean, he certainly knows that they got to be a little helpful, right?
Well, it's addressed, actually. It's addressed when the first, either the attack occurs or something. Hermione, I think it's at the Quidditch game, Hermione mentions how furious Dumbledore is. I think it's like one of the first references of Dumbledore actually flipping his lid on the Dementors for breaking barrier, and obviously going and trying to kiss Harry, I think it was. But Dumbledore doesn't like them, and I think several characters throughout this book are saying how, if Dumbledore saw any other option, he would have taken it. But people seem to respect him for putting these horrible monsters at Hogwarts simply because of the added precaution.
Yeah, and Arthur Weasley says something really interesting. He says, when you're dealing with a wizard like Black, you sometimes have to join forces with those you'd rather avoid, and that's referring to the Dementors. But I was wondering, does this ever come into play later on in the series when you're forced to work with people maybe you'd rather not?
Yeah. Mundungus Fletcher comes to mind immediately, but, I mean, that's not really a big thing. But just the role that Narcissa Malfoy later plays, I think, is kind of related. Because Harry trusts her in the very end.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
And Andrew, I think the final point is yours.
Yeah, the final thing in this chapter I thought was interesting. There's a quote at the end of this chapter. The thing that bothered Harry most was the fact that his chances of visiting Hogsmeade now looked like 0. Nobody would want Harry to leave the safety of the castle until Black was caught. So I'm wondering why, out of everything that Harry's learning all of a sudden, that what bothered Harry most was that he wouldn't be able to go to a village. I mean, I know it's Harry's sort of way of being a normal wizard. I get that, and I sympathize. But why is that what bothered him most? I mean, is that sort of his immaturity, or does he not really understand? I mean, he doesn't know that Sirius is his uncle. So... Godfather. Sorry.
Same thing.
Godfather. So why? Why is he not concerned? I mean, he thinks he thinks he's a tough. Yeah, he should be scared if he's 13.
Yeah,
he thinks he's all Mr. Tough Guy because I've defeated Voldemort twice. Blah, blah.
Yeah, your question in this doc is he less concerned about his safety? Why is that? And I just think, I think Harry wants to be normal. I think that's what it is. I mean, he just doesn't want any special treatment, which is the one side of it, and the other side is, he just does want to get on with being, regular. So, I mean, him being excluded from Hogsmeade, which it very much seems like he will be, and, later we find out, yes, that's exactly what's happening. He doesn't want to be put apart. He doesn't want people to know that he's being treated differently, that he doesn't, that he's not one of the crowd, because he really wants to blend in. I just think that's a traditional way for a 13-year-old to feel.
Chapter 5, The Dementor, starts off with Harry wanting to tell Ron and Hermione what he learned the night previously, but they're all interrupted by the busy morning of trying to get to King's Cross. And here we see more bickering about Crookshanks and Scabbers between Hermione and Ron. And this got me... round 2. So this got me thinking, are the two animals sort of reflections of their respective owners? When you think about it, Crookshanks is a character who likes to physically attack the lower animals on the food chain, similar to how Hermione is higher on the educational food chain, so to speak, and regularly attacks Ron verbally. Do you guys see any parallels between Hermione Crookshanks and Ron Scabbers?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring that up. I mean, I know Crookshanks is going after Scabbers because he realizes that Scabbers is not what he appears to be, but I also think that that's interesting insight into Ron and Hermione's characters, though, definitely. I mean, Crookshanks does act that way a lot throughout the course of the series. I mean, he kind of polices and goes after, I think in Order of the Phoenix, he jumps at some of the fireworks, and occasionally he'll go after an owl or two. It's interesting. I don't know. It's cool that you brought that up.
The death of Hedwig. No, I agree. It's and thinking of Scabbers as a mass murderer simply doesn't work in this question. But it's fascinating because watching Ron be protective over Scabbers being the weak rodent who's already lost a toe, and Ron protecting him and getting genuinely offended at every little step that Hermione's pet makes. I think it's, and what you said, Micah, about Crookshanks policing, totally exactly it. So yeah, I think there is a great connection.
So at this point we reach a little movie comparison. They're about to board the Hogwarts Express, and Mrs. Weasley starts distributing sandwiches for the train ride, which is very thoughtful of her.
Yeah, very nice.
Sorry, isn't it like minced meat or something?
It's just funny that she does that. I mean, it's definitely a motherly thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Her last little help, the way to help the kids before they go to Hogwarts again. But so Mr. Weasley notices that at this moment he can pull Harry away, so he does, and prepares to tell him about Sirius, but Harry stops him and tells him, "Hey, I heard what you and Mrs. Weasley said last night." And Arthur says this isn't the way he would have hoped for Harry to find out, but to make matters worse, he follows up with this statement. I can't believe he says this to Harry. "Harry, you must be very scared." I mean, that's not something you want to say to a kid who potentially could be scared. That's not very comforting, and he's looking up to you for support. If a parent told me, "You must be scared," or, "You must stink," or something like that, I would be very hurt. Or
especially when you're seeing death omens everywhere.
Exactly.
Harry, you must just be wanting to give up right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it was a spur of the moment sort of thing.
It's his heart's in the right place. It's like a plot device because of your next point, Andrew. But his heart's in the right place.
Well, so Arthur asks Harry to swear to him that he won't go looking for Black, and that's sort of a cool line in the movie. By the way, the movie comparison I was making was Arthur does not tell him at the at King's Cross. He tells him at the Three Broomsticks or Leaky Cauldron.
Leaky Cauldron, yeah.
Leaky Cauldron. So Arthur asks Harry to swear to him that he won't go looking for Black, and that was a cool quote in the movie. Swear to me you won't go looking for Black.
Why would I go looking for someone who wants to kill me?
Yeah. And Harry is confused by this statement, but there's little time to clarify because the Hogwarts Express begins to pull away. So Arthur quickly tells him to not believe what he may hear. And Harry starts to run away, so technically Harry never agrees that he won't go looking because he goes running for the train. I just wanted to note that for the record.
I hate to bring this up, but wouldn't this have been the best time to explain to Harry everything that was going on between Harry's parents and Sirius Black? I mean, I know he finds out about it later in the book, overhearing it when he shouldn't be, but again, they never give him this information. He finds out when he's under the invisibility cloak in the Three Broomsticks. Wouldn't this have been an ideal time, both the Weasleys being sort of the parental figures to him, to sit him down and tell him what exactly transpired between Sirius and Harry's parents?
And to think that Dumbledore should at least step in too. I mean, once Harry, giving him just the time on the train to think it out, sure, but had they approached him early, he probably wouldn't have wanted to break into Hogsmeade as badly, because he ends up putting himself in further danger just to overhear the true story anyway, or as much as they know it. If Dumbledore were to sit down with Harry at the beginning of term, treat him like an adult, which we know that Dumbledore himself regrets not doing sooner. Later, just sitting him down and saying, look, this is the deal, giving Harry the support structure to have the knowledge and make those make those decisions that what he wants to do. I guess the fear is that Harry wants to avenge his parents' death, that's going to be the big thing once
But that happens anyway.
Well, it happens anyway, but giving him the context of a whole year, instead of just a few weeks or a few days, I forget which it is later on, to decide what he wants to do with that information, and, giving him the support structure of the students and the teachers and the parents that know what position he's in, would have possibly influenced things, for Harry's better, but at the same time wouldn't have worked as well with, obviously Harry as susceptible to believe that Black isn't actually a villain, I guess.
So, moving along, Harry tells Ron and Hermione he needs to speak with them in private. They find the compartment with only Lupin inside and establish that he'll be the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, because on his case it says Professor Lupin, and they're like, oh, there's only one spot to fill. So, Harry fills Ron and Hermione in on what he learned, and they too are confused by Arthur's warning about searching for Sirius. And Ron and Hermione begin to talk about Hogsmeade at this point, and this upsets Harry. And when discussing how Harry could join them, Ron briefly considers asking Fred and George if there are passages out of the castle to Hogsmeade.
But it is foreshadowing about the Marauders map, which comes into play later on, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my point about before that, I thought, just real quick, was that I just thought it was really foul how Draco knew more than Harry, though.
Yeah.
Because Draco taunts him at points during this book, almost like he does know about Sirius and what Sirius did, and the fact that Harry has no clue, I thought that was wrong.
Yeah, and surely others in the wizarding community, they don't know that Black was the secret keeper, or whatever Fudge says, has been kept out of the press as well, but surely they do know. The popular knowledge should be a little bit more than Harry knows, and that's just a bad position to put Harry in. Just in general. I don't think that's fair.
So, Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle briefly enter the trio's compartment, but don't pick a fight, as Ron is quick to point out that a new Hogwarts teacher is right there with them. And so they leave, and then suddenly things start to get nasty. The train begins to come to stop as everything outside grows darker. We know it was raining pretty much the whole time. And lights go off in the train, and people begin to panic. So this is where another movie difference comes in. In the book, Lupin awakes before the Dementor comes in, and Lupin lights a fire in his hand, but the Dementor opens the door before Lupin can reach it. The Dementor begins to suck out Harry's soul, and begins to black out, and he starts feeling very depressed. We see all the effects of what a Dementor can do to you when you're sucking out, when your soul is being removed. Of course, the movie difference here is that in the movie, the Dementor begins to come in, and then Lupin just suddenly happens to awake and sends the spell. So it was just funny because there's so many things that happen in this compartment right before the Dementors come in that this is the thing that wakes Lupin up. I just thought that to be kind of...
He's got an eye for danger.
I'm not criticizing it, but there was a lot more louder things going on. I don't think that the Dementor attack was too loud. I don't know.
Well,
maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
Was he sleeping? I mean,
maybe
it never comes into play. It's not relevant, except, speculative. Was he asleep? That was always the question I was asking. Was Lupin really asleep?
But they still come in there. I mean, he wasn't planning on the trio coming in there, would he? Did he assume that only the trio would end up coming into his compartment?
I don't know. I mean, he doesn't know.
Because I just don't see the point of why he would be sleeping or pretending to be sleeping to begin with. Unless he really was sleeping, and then he...
Maybe he just sensed the presence of the Dementor. Maybe, and he knew that was, of course he could have been woken up at times. You don't have to open your eyes just to, to be awake. And, maybe he just kind of pushed it aside as being, young kids being obnoxious. But when he felt the presence of the Dementor and the train slow down, he, jumped into action.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, but I was wondering a little what if here. What if they hadn't chosen the compartment Lupin was sleeping in to stay in? Or what if Lupin wasn't on the train at all? Who would have saved Harry?
That's a good question. You get a bunch
of... Could a student have jumped in who's experienced with fighting Dementors?
It seems like... it seems like
Patronus?
Dementors were never part of the original curriculum. In any of the books, it's not like, okay, now we're going to deal with Dementors. I wonder if anybody, sans the conductor and maybe the trolley lady, would have come in and kicked some Dementor. But, they're all underage wizards, with the, seventh years, obviously a little ambiguous there. But, yeah, it's a darn good question. Like, how is the Hogwarts Express vulnerable from attack, or is it? And I think a Dementor would have made off with Harry's soul.
I think you're right. I don't see how else he could have gotten out of it, unless Hermione had conveniently learned.
Read about it, or Acio'd some books from the library.
Accio, someone else's Patronus. I don't know. Okay, so everyone arrives at Hogwarts, and Draco teases Harry for passing out, and McGonagall brings the trio up to her office to speak with them. But Harry insists that he is fine and does not need any assistance from Madame Pomfrey. Madame Pomfrey's sort of there and being like, "Yo, you messed yourself up again." No, she's kind of mean. I didn't like her. And then McGonagall has a private word with Hermione, who exits the brief meeting with a big smile on her face. Is this the moment she received her time turner, you think?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Seems
or
like
that she'd be allowed to use it. She gets the permission. Maybe.
Yeah, because I was going to say in the movie, we see, and I can't remember if this happens in the book, but in the movie, Hermione says, Dumbledore gave it to me. So,
does she?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when he's explaining it, when she's explaining it to Harry. So Dumbledore gives his welcome feast speech and warns the students not to leave the grounds or else they will be greeted by an unfriendly Dementor. And Dumbledore announces that Lupin will be the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, and Hagrid will take over the Care of Magical Creatures position. To this, Hagrid was very excited. He shed some tears. It was really, really bittersweet. And to Harry's surprise, this was interesting. Snape gives Lupin a loathing look, only comparable to when Snape looks at Harry.
Yeah.
This is when Dumbledore announces that Lupin will be the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. So why would Snape do this, even though he's a good guy? Is he just upset he's still not the teacher?
Well, that's the excuse they give, isn't it?
I don't believe that. I mean, I think when you look at Order of the Phoenix and you go into Snape's memory, as much as Lupin wasn't responsible for what happened to Snape during his time there, he really didn't do much to prevent it. So I think it's kind of one of those situations that even though you're not actually acting on it, you're still complicit in it because you're not doing anything. And I think Snape holds Lupin accountable for that, and for being James and Sirius's best friend.
It's bad memories stirred up. I mean, we've seen Snape lose it. Don't call me a coward. When he gets emotional, he's not able to be professional. And obviously, this old school rivalry is not something Snape needed. And to see it firsthand is probably just bitter. He's bitter.
So the feast begins and all is well until the next chapter.
Dun, dun, dun. So similarly to how Andrew had the last comment of the chapter, My first note of Chapter 6 is about Chapter 5. The last words of the chapter are, quote, "They reached their familiar circular dormitory with its 5 four-poster beds, and Harry, looking around, felt that he was home at last." That's just a great character moment where Harry's like, oh, I'm finally home. So it's his first day at Hogwarts in Chapter 6. Talons and tea leaves. And Harry's a little upset because he fainted on the train and all of the Slytherins are making fun of him. That's just kind of a recurring theme of this chapter, is that Harry is starting to feel really weak. He's starting to feel out of the loop. And there's this great moment here where Fred and George turn the subject to Quidditch. And they're like, yeah, well, we'll just whoop his butt in Quidditch then. Don't worry about Malfoy. So that's really cool. And they're handed their class schedules, which is great because now we see for the first time that they are taking new classes, so we're going to learn a little bit more about the different branches of magic in the world, which is great. And now it comes to a head where Ron sees Hermione's schedule and tells her that there simply isn't enough time, which is italicized, for her to take 10 classes. She tells him to mind his own subplots, but he persists. She's got divination, Muggle Studies, and arithmancy, all at 9 a.m. Okay, so my point here is, because we're actually seeing, she's actually got 3 classes at once, which means she's taking one of the classes, going back in time, taking that class, going back in time again. And that's her that's her 9 a.m. slot. And yeah. I just kind of think, I can't help but think, when reading this, that it's got to add up. All this extra time that she's living. She's basically older than she should be. And it's not just a little thing, because they're in Hogwarts, for what, 8 months or so. And, by the end of the year, sure, she drops divination, but she's going to be that many hours older than herself.
Well, I don't know how relevant I don't know if it makes too much of a difference, but I was going to say earlier, it's certainly interesting at the start of each of these school years to see all these new classes and these new books. It was always fun to read, the clever titles that Joe came up with for, the school books, and just to see the new classes as well.
Yeah.
But I can't figure out, I know Hermione's a hardcore student, but I still can't figure out why she wanted to take all these classes so badly.
In year 3, no doubt. I mean, there were 4 more years that she could have done this.
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't necessary.
No.
Because otherwise all the students would be doing it. Everyone would have a time turner. It'd just be one crazy
Yeah. Well,
time
that's
warp.
interesting how it's convenient, but at the same time, I just think, I mentioned in my notes, book 4, where they have that age restriction drought that Fred and George try and trip. If Hermione had done enough time traveling, she would have been old enough to put her name in the Goblet of Fire, had she wanted to. But that's an extreme. Okay, so they meet Sir Cadogan on their way to divination. They come upon this painting of a grassy patch with a pony. And Sir Cadogan agrees to show them the rest of the way to the North Tower, and it's just Harry's kind of an I Love Magic moment. But Joe writes how Sir Cadogan is traveling through all these other paintings of monks that look hostile, and I just put here that I really wish that at some point throughout the series they would have skidooed and gone into the portrait world. Because it seems really cool.
Yeah, well, is it Charlie or Bill who ask about Sir Cadogan? I think it's in Goblet of Fire. When?
Yeah, they ask,
one of them says, something like that. Is he still running around? Or I can't remember what the exact question was, but again, it shows how insignificant the character is, J.K. Rowling still makes them relevant throughout the course of the series.
Yeah. That other people, Hogwarts, Bill and Charlie at their time knew him somehow. All these stories waiting to be told. So we do meet Trelawney. They get to divination, and we meet Sybil Trelawney. And I write here that she's the second concrete link to Harry's past that we have, because in this book, at least, because apart from Sirius Black, who's been blamed for telling Voldemort where Lily and James were hiding out, Trelawney, we later find out, was the seer who made the original prophecy. Directly the reason that Voldemort came after Harry to begin with. Very important character that is passed off as this kook, and this teacher that we, little do we know, But it's fascinating how Jo, at the same time she's telling a story about Harry in his third year, he's 13, his new classes, she's also fleshing out the backstory. One of the great things I think about this book that I will bring up when I can. So basically, the divination class goes on. Trelawney starts making tiny, I say cryptic pronouncements about certain members of the class. She's like, "Oh, Neville, your grandmother is gonna, is she well? Oh, I wouldn't be so sure." And Ron, let me think this. Ron reads Harry's tea leaves, and he says there's this. Do you guys remember at one point, especially Mike, I think you may have talked about this, about Ron suggests that Harry's going to get some unexpected gold, and that obviously does happen in year 4. But some of these prophecies, I think Jo has hidden as being actual foreshadowing to the future books.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, all the little things that get thrown in there that you have to pay attention to, that you realize more so when you go back and reread the series for the however many times, but there's always something in there that maybe you didn't notice previously, and this is one of those things. Like you said, an unexpected windfall of gold. It obviously comes Harry's way at the end of Goblet of Fire.
Yeah. Plus, when you think about what's going on right now, Trelawney, who's made out to be some insane woman, is teaching them how to read tea leaves, and Ron is giving Harry a prediction. So between Ron, who's not the best student, and Trelawney being some crazy woman, you would never guess that this prediction would actually come true. Even if it did truly come true, it could be a mere coincidence.
Yeah. And I think what I was trying to remember was later in the book when they actually Ron and Harry are purposefully making stuff up. That's when it actually, I think, even deeper and more correctly foreshadows the rest of the series. But it's cool, and it's evidence of pre-planning. So MuggleCast 6, Anna 0. The Grimm, no, 1 or 2, I'd say, for Anna. The Grimm, we got Death Omen count number 3 or 4, Micah, do you know? So far?
3, I think.
3. It's just, this really upsets Harry. It's Harry being vulnerable again, and really...
What's the omen?
The omen is...
Trelawney's prediction.
Trelawney's predicting that he's got the Grimm in his teacup. And Harry's like, okay, I'm gonna die. And I keep seeing this dog, which he later tells Ron at lunch in this chapter, and it's really disconcerting to him. The only thing that allays Harry's fears is... McGonagall, in Transfiguration, which happens after divination. She tells them that Trelawney predicts the death of students every year, and it's never happened. So Harry's, at
this point, do you think Harry's number one concern was still not going to Hogsmeade, or has it changed by this point?
I think he's more concerned about seeing the Grimm, actually, and I think as evidenced by Hermione and Ron specifically dueling it out about this in this chapter. I don't have it in the notes, but Hermione's like, you didn't think it was that important. You weren't ranting about Uncle Bilious when you were telling Harry that his tea leaves were a sheep, instead of a Grimm. And it's just this really, they know how Harry's feeling, but at the same time, I think death is a priority. So much so that I'm really worried that Harry's a little young to be worried if he's going to die. He's 13, so... Is this a children's book? Harry's basically seeing these death omens.
We keep going back to that email. I think it's funny. But what's also kind of interesting here is that McGonagall basically, through her, creative language, dismisses what Trelawney is all about. But yet, in Order of the Phoenix, she actually feels terrible for the way Trelawney gets treated by Umbridge. So it's a little bit of a turnaround for McGonagall's character from where things are nice in this book and they get really bad in Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah. She's got her heart in the right place. She just doesn't like what the Ministry's doing, and that's very very apparent. So I just have between divination and transfiguration, Hermione has also gone back in time twice, which isn't mentioned, obviously, but that's just, I'm trying to keep account. So they get to Care of Magical Creatures after lunch, and it's really out of loyalty. This is just a great Harry character moment. He's concerned, he just came from lunch. They're talking about whether or not he's going to die. And Harry sees that Hagrid's class is not going well. Obviously they've been given this monster book of monsters, which nobody opened. Hagrid's really upset. He, prepared since 5 a.m. for this, he said before. And Harry volunteers to go up and talk to Buckbeak. Slightly different than what happens in the movie. I think what happens in the movie is funny. But slightly different. It's out of Harry's loyalty for Hagrid that he volunteers to go up and try and get on Buckbeak. I wanted to mention, because the hippogriff is like this fantastic beast, to say it, obviously.
And where to find them.
And where to find it is this paddock. But this characterization of the creature of Buckbeak, how they're proud creatures, how you have to bow to them. I don't know how much fantasy literature you guys have read, but have you guys ever really read anything like this? And Nick, have you read anything where like there's this character or this animal that's characterized like this? I mean, it's just...
Yeah, I haven't come across anything like that, no.
It's quite cool.
Well, it is a magical world. I mean, what do you expect?
But creatures that you have to bow to, and...
The depth of the personification of these creatures, I think, is just a testament to Jo's creativity and her writing.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to the whole point that Anna made earlier.
But also when you think about, approaching, let's say, I don't know, a tiger, you do it with caution. And I know you can't simply just bow to it and, be able to approach it. But I think what Joe's trying to get across here is this is a very powerful creature that's high up on the food chain, sort of like, say, a lion or a tiger, and you need to show it respect. And this is the way that people in the wizarding world can connect with the animal and show it respect by bowing to it because you were saying permission to approach you. Maybe there's some way we can do that with lions and tigers and bears.
That's
and
a good point.
We don't know.
It's true. It's how you'd gain the trust of any animal. That's a good point. I definitely wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah, PETA, baby. Animal rights.
The last point, then, is that the trio, they're upset with the class. Obviously, Malfoy gets injured by the hippogriff because he wasn't paying attention. And there's this big scene, which I just basically skipped over because, A, we're all familiar with it. B, I just... Obviously, the aftermath is, in some ways, we'll cover it all when dealing with the aftermath. So the trio, they go to Hagrid's hut after hours. They see that there's a light on, and they go visit him. He's really drunk. Obviously, he's scared, but Hagrid is just really drunk, slurring speech, completely out of sorts. And it's interesting, just because they're taking care of him, and we've seen the trio cater to him in the past, but it's just they take him out back and they soak his head in a bucket. And it's just, I just wanted to mention, because it's like codependent, but it's just also very interesting that this is in the book. I mean,
we see it in the Half-Blood Prince film. Why didn't we see drunk Hagrid in the Prisoner of Azkaban film? What changed? Was it a time issue? Too soon.
Too soon. There was no way to work a shrunken head into Hagrid's hut. That just would have been too much.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but now I want to watch Half-Blood Prince tonight, because I want to see a drunk Hagrid again.
Hagrid. Yeah, but he's drunk really early on. I mean, these are 13-year-olds. Obviously, he wasn't planning on being visited, but still. And he does jump to the parental guidance side of him when he comes to after dunking his head in water and sends them immediately back up to their dormitories because they're out after hours.
Yeah. But this really begins with Draco, sort of his series of trying to get Hagrid into trouble. And if it wasn't a hippogriff, it would have ended up being some other creature that Draco tried to taunt in order to make Hagrid look bad.
Well, it was Norbert, too. I mean, in book one. It's just Draco doesn't like Hagrid, half-breeds. He's been raised to believe that they're less human.
So there we go. 4 through 6 of Prisoner of Azkaban. Boy, that was one of our longest chapter-by-chapter segments, I think, but... we got away from
material.
There is a lot of material, absolutely. We got away from quote quiz last week, and maybe even the episode before that. So, quote quiz. This is a difficult one. You guys will all be challenged. Ridiculous. That's Quote Quiz. Who said it?
Everyone except Harry.
That's why, yes. That's why it's a challenge. But good catch, guys. I thought I had you fooled. Not the MuggleCasters. It's time now for This Week in MuggleCast History. We went all the way back to episode 28, February 19th, 2006. Our main discussion was Professor McGonagall. And good old Laura Thompson, and Kevin makes an appearance too. Kevin Seck, we all remember Kevin Seck. They have some speculating to do. It's pretty funny. Take a listen.
Absolutely could have bonded together.
Well, that could go straight into the whole theory, do Dumbledore and McGonagall, did they have some sort of romantic interest in one another?
Oh, no. I doubt it, too.
I don't think so, but I know a lot of people like the pairing.
It was an office relationship.
No. Yeah, I think so, too.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, but I've actually seen quite a few fan fictions on that topic.
Wow, okay.
Now what?
Let's get off that topic very fast.
Rachel is blown away.
Oh,
she can't even imagine it. So, what have we seen from her in terms of magical ability?
There's a little moment there from episode 28.
Kevin Stack.
Yeah, I know. It was funny. Laura was so, afraid to bring it up. She was like, are they possibly in a relationship? And boy, if we only knew then.
What do we know now?
We know that Dumbledore is gay, so they would definitely not be together.
Oh, yes, of course. Crap.
Yeah.
I have to forget that.
Something else we haven't done in a while here on MuggleCast, and to wrap up the show today, Chicken Soup for the MuggleCast Soul. This one comes from Amy22 of Cardiff, Wales. Cardiff, Wales? How do you pronounce that, Nick?
Cardiff,
Wales. Thank you. I just wanted all you guys to know how much you have helped me ever since you began, but especially in the recent months. Last year, I took a gap year from my degree because I wasn't enjoying it. I had a fabulous time away, but last September, it was time for me to return and finish the final year of my course. My university is in Cardiff, but my home is 183 miles away, and it takes me nearly 6 hours to get home. All my friends who I was at university with graduated last year, and I now know no one. I'm very lonely and not enjoying my course. Listening to you guys reminds me of better, happier times, and feels like I have friends around me. It means a lot, and I know you have touched many others around the world in the same way. Thank you, and keep it up. ... For my sanity, Amy. Well, Amy, glad to hear that the show's helping you out. MuggleNet's been a constant in many of our lives, I'd like to think. But before we wrap up the show today, we have a couple announcements. Don't forget to vote for us on Podcast Alley. We ask you every week, or every episode, and we do appreciate it. We're in the middle of FuggleCast February, and as I can see right now, we're not on the top 10 list, so if you could go to podcastalley.com and vote for us, we would greatly appreciate that. Also, Infinitus 2010. The website is infinitus2010.org, and the location is Orlando, Florida, from July 15th to the 18th of this year. They just announced that there is going to be a party in the park exclusively for Infinitus attendees. So that means the Harry Potter theme park is going to close down, and they're only going to let in Infinitus attendees in a special night party. So, in other words, it's going to be the biggest Harry Potter fans all together at one giant Harry Potter party in the Harry Potter theme park. I mean, I don't know how much better it could get than that. And I was thinking that, we should get all the MuggleCast listeners together and do a sort of, we can all ride on the rides together. So go to infinitus2010.org to learn more details and to register. We're going to be doing a MuggleCast there. It's going to be a lot of fun. And finally today, I would just like to plug something. You guys are going to laugh at me. I'm sure you're looking at it in the Google Doc right now and wondering what's going on. But I am starting a Lady Gaga fan site. And it's called Matt just laughed at me. It's called thegagabeat.com. It's your all-around ultimate fan site for Lady Gaga. And like Harry Potter and Twilight, Lady Gaga is a phenomenon. So I wanted to jump in on this too, and I'm doing it with a couple friends, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So again, visit thegagabeat.com if you're a Lady Gaga fan. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to run a Lady Gaga fan site. I know you all think I'm crazy, but you know what? I don't care. I do a Harry Potter podcast. What can I say?
Let me know if you need a Gaga caption contest.
I think we would need one with all the crazy costumes she wears, so maybe I'll take you up on that. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. It's been a very full show, but a very fun show. We want to remind you all again that MuggleCast.com is the website where you can get all the information you need pertaining to the show. You can follow us on Twitter, fan us on Facebook. You can email us through MuggleCast.com too. That's how we get all your feedback that we read here on the show each and every week. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. I'm Andrew Sims.
I'm Eric Skull.
I'm Micah Tannenbaum.
And I'm Nick Myers.
We'll see you next time for episode 193. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.